All right, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at social Darwinism, the philosophy of big business. The overarching essay prompt here is discuss the philosophy of social Darwinism and compare the philosophies of Herbert Spencer and William Graham Sumner, both social Darwinist philosophers. Describe the development of corporate capitalism and how it was an expression of social Darwinism in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries. Fix grammatically here. This should be plural. Okay. So in this clip, we'll be looking at concept 1, defining social Darwinism, and discussing the reasons for the acceptance of the philosophy of social Darwinism. So, as discussed in an earlier lecture, the American frontier created an environment for social mobility in society. The opportunity for this social mobility existed because the frontier had no pre-existing social structure. Hence, only those who could adjust to the environment would survive and have a chance to be successful. So goes the theory of this kind of frontier idea. The concept of survival of the fittest, social Darwinism, is basically what social Darwinism is, developed in the landed frontier and was seen as a natural process, perceived as a natural process, I should emphasize. Due to the practice of social Darwinism on the landed frontier, the philosophy of social Darwinism became widely accepted when introduced in America as an explanation and a justification of wealth and power held by the new rich post-Civil War, as the Second Industrial Revolution was well on its way and entrenching itself in American society. So there were three basic reasons for America's acceptance of the social, economic, and moral philosophy of social Darwinism. So as discussed, the first one, as discussed under the landed frontier, the experience that people encountered helped foster the idea of laissez-faire, since it supported individualism, at least the concept of individualism, and the idea that man and society benefit from competition. As the landed frontier was on its last leg of existence by the 1890s, its concepts were being applied to the new industrial frontier with some serious repercussions. Example, the railroads and their abuses. The second reason behind the acceptance of social Darwinism was the philosophy of laissez-faire. The political compromise of 1877 marked the end of Reconstruction after the Civil War and the end of an era of strong centralized government influence within society. It also marked the beginning of another era, that of laissez-faire. Laissez-faire was the foundation upon which the social and economic philosophy of social Darwinism was built, and its roots were planted deeply in American history. In 1776, the Englishman named Adam Smith wrote the book called A Wealth of Nations. In his book, Smith put forward his theory of the invisible hand, or the laissez-faire concept, the idea that natural laws would govern society. Smith felt that the free operation of laws of supply and demand within society would reward those who produced the best product at the lowest price, and government regulation was unnecessary. Smith's philosophy is valid up to a point. His argument becomes invalid with the development of the corporation that produces goods for a mass market. Smith was writing for a simpler society where there were many producers competing for a local market. Smith also felt if man followed his self-interest, he would realize that his greatest good would be gained not through the exploitations of his fellow man, but through the recognition of his duties and obligations to society. So, American colonists had a bad experience with government regulations from England, in the mid-1770s. Because of this, they wanted weak government, which would allow them economic self-determination. The Articles of Confederation was basically the results of their experience. The Articles of Confederation failed, though, and the colonists realized, Americans at that time realized that they needed a stronger central government than they originally thought. Thus, our present-day Constitution came into being, which is far more empowered a stronger government, much more than the Articles of Confederation. The colonists also developed a laissez-faire economy during the first 150 years or so of its development. During that time, England neglected the development of the colonies. There is a good argument that laissez-faire is just as good today as it was in Adam Smith's time. That argument holds that even in a corporate society, laissez-faire works under the countervailing power theory. That theory argues that a person should be able to charge any price for their product, regardless of whether they have a monopoly or not. If the price is so high that it leads to great profits, those profits will encourage someone else to develop countervailing power, right? Competition. The countervailing power is a product that provides the same service or function as the high-priced product, but is a different product altogether. For example, if someone had a monopoly on, let's say, wax paper and charged $10 a box, the countervailing power theory holds that someone would develop saran wrap and sell it for less. This new product would force the makers of the old product to lower the price and their product in order to become competitive. The final factor that influenced the acceptance of social Darwinism was the Protestant work ethic, or the Puritan theory. This theory held that God helps those that help themselves. Hard work and thrift lead to prosperity, and success comes as a result of God and His grace. And one knows God has graced you if you are a hard worker and successful, right? If you're not a hard worker and not successful, then you are not graced by God. If someone was successful, it was considered a sign from God and that they were doing the right thing in life, thereby fulfilling their destiny. Under these theories, there was no need to feel ashamed or guilty for having wealth while others went hungry. The wealth and power one accumulated was the result of God's will, obviously. Thus, it was deserved. Consequently, the highest of all authorities was used to justify the wealth and power that came from opportunities provided by the American frontiers. This philosophy was represented by Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate of the late 19th century. Carnegie was a typical businessman of his time. He fashioned and publicized a philosophy for big business, which was a conservative rationale, and became deeply implanted in the conventional wisdom of Americans. In 1889, Carnegie published an essay in the North American Review entitled Wealth, which was later retitled The Gospel of Wealth when reprinted in England. In The Evolution of Society, Andrew Carnegie argued the contrast between the millionaire and the laborer measures the distance society has come. Quote, not evil, but good has come to the race from the accumulation of wealth by those who have the ability and energy that produces it. So let me repeat that. This is a very telling quote. So again, this is from The Gospel of Wealth, written by Andrew Carnegie in the late 19th century. Not evil, but good has come to the race for the accumulation of wealth by those who have the ability and the energy that produce it. The process had been costly in many ways, but the law of competition was, quote, best for the race, because the human race, that is, because it ensures the survival of the fittest in every department. Carnegie next moved on the sermon on the proper uses of wealth. He stated a rich man could leave his fortune to his children, but experience suggested that this was not always wise. He might leave it at his death for public uses, but in his absence, it would likely be misused. The best way to dispense with a fortune was to administer it during one's lifetime for the public good. Carnegie, in ways of being Carnegie felt one should avoid almsgiving, but rather provided a means for people to help themselves by supporting universities, libraries, hospitals, parks, halls for meetings and concerts, swimming baths, church buildings, in that order. To his credit, Carnegie set an excellent example, devoting his wealth to many such benefactors and to the causes of world peace. Carnegie's gospel of wealth found widespread acceptance in the late 19th century worship of success and helped develop an attitude of respect for the self-made man. So this becomes widely known as kind of the expectation of what the wealthy should do, and many of the justifications for it was that the wealth, since they were the fittest, they were more suited to understand what was in the public good. And if the wealthy did not do this, then the government would step in, and there was a very strong suspicion of what government could do. And so it was the responsibility for the wealthiest of the wealthy in that society to do such things. All right, that concludes Concept 1. I'll talk with you guys later in Concept 2. Do let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Talk to you later. Bye.